Hi, everybody. Excited to be here today and share with you my experiences. So I've been a product manager for the last few years. I've worked in small organizations like Series A startups, and I've also worked with larger product teams like the ones at Square as well. And so today what I want to share with you is how I've been able to use tools like Atlassian's JIRA Software and Confluence to be able to manage the chaos that happens with the product development process. To give you a sense of my background, I was a co-founder of a 3-person startup. And because it's a 3-person startup, in order to release a feature, all you need to do is take a look at one another across the table, give a thumbs up before you release a feature. Now, joining a larger organization, that's not the case anymore. There has to be collaboration and communication along the way. And so what I decided to do is kind of take a step back and realize when it comes to developing a product, there are a few key steps. And I don't think this is anything super controversial, but effectively you plan the feature. So you talk about what the goal is you want to solve for, what the use case is, what your success metrics look like, and so on. Then it's time to execute. So you're working with your designers and your developers to figure out the best solution for your customer. And then what you want to do is you want to test this against real-world settings with your QA team. And lastly, because you've set some success metrics to begin with, you want to ensure that you're meeting those results. So nothing too crazy, but at the same time, lots of these features are happening at the same time, and that makes it a little bit more chaotic. Additionally, you've got stakeholders that are asking you various questions along the way. So you might be curious about who some of these stakeholders are. And first of all, they are your team members. These are individuals like developers, designers, QA folks, and what they want to focus on is why is a certain feature important and what is it exactly? And so the focus is really about clarity. You also have other folks that are cross-functional in nature. These are other business units like sales and support and marketing or other product teams. And because they may have dependencies on the features that you're building, they have questions about and focus about efficiency. And lastly, you've got executives. These are folks that want to get a better sense of what your roadmap looks like. How does that tie with what does your roadmap look like, and what are the potential results that you've delivered with the products and features that you've shipped? So just kind of a summary, what I've noticed over time is you have various stakeholders, and there's different type of themes of type of questions that they ask, and those are related to clarity, efficiency, and visibility. So what ends up happening in this situation is, as a product development team, there are all these sort of implicit workflows and responsibilities that you have. And if there are not explicit workflows, then there are some symptoms that happen along the way. So I want to share with you some of these symptoms. First of all, is information overload. Tons of documents, presentations, spreadsheets all over the place. And trying to get a handle of it can be quite intimidating oftentimes. And so what ends up happening is you have lots of meetings. And these meetings can be very prescriptive in nature, where you're going down a list of features, trying to figure out what the status is of many features. You might also have one-on-one meetings, where you're just really trying to figure out what's going on at any given time. And for me as a product manager, what I find is my computer becomes incredibly slow because I'm frantically copying and pasting content from different tools such as chat to Confluence to weekly reporting docs and so on and so forth. And so in this sort of environment, I thought to myself, is chaos the only way? And there's an executive called Andy Grove who has this quote, which is, "Let chaos reign and then reign in chaos." And so we as a product development team thought, okay, there's got to be a better way than all this thrashing, all this chaos that's happening around our environment. And so we took a step back and said, what are the tools that we have available today? And some of those tools included the Atlassian JIRA Software and Confluence tools. And so what I'm going to present to you guys today is how we built explicit workflows to solve these specific themes, which is clarity, efficiency, and visibility. And so I'll present to you guys some of those explicit workflows that we built. So just to kind of start from the top, in terms of clarity, we used JIRA epics. And so JIRA epics are, I'm sure many of you have seen JIRA epics before. They help answer many standard questions. And so if you take a look at the content which you can fill in the JIRA epic, there's lots of questions that are fundamentally can be answered with the epic itself. These are questions such as who, why, what, when, and how. Additionally, the JIRA epic also has ties into specific JIRA issues. And what the JIRA issues represents is the scope of the work for that specific epic or feature. And so what somebody can do is effectively say, what issues are within the scope of this specific feature? And you can have conversations to descope features appropriately and add them into the comment logs as well. So the comment logs allow you to then have takeaways. Having these takeaways is very helpful so that when you present this work to other stakeholders who are coming into the room, they can quickly get context about what the feature is about. So what's also super cool about the epic itself is that it represents the source of truth with a specific feature. And by representing a source of truth, you're able then to use it in other tools within the Atlassian ecosystem. And so I want to kind of talk about that now. So what I'm also saying is that JIRA software can help with efficiency. So the tools that I use for efficiency is effectively the Kanban board. So beforehand, what we saw was the product development steps. And what I've done in this case, or what we've done in this case, is we've actually mapped each of the specific columns within the Kanban board to the specific product development steps. So you'll see planning, executing, testing, and measuring. And what's great about this is we're now able to answer very standard questions, which is which team is working on, which internal team is working on which features. And we can start to answer questions related to blockers such as which step in the product development cycle it has too many resources or is not well resourced enough. And so that allows me as a product manager to help the appropriate teams with building and shipping features. So something else that's really nice once you set up the epics is you can set up these Confluence pages. And this is an example of a Confluence page that I set up to help facilitate meeting notes. So I would have a common meeting such as, and so some of the meetings that I would have, the basic sort of questions that would be answered or being asked are basically, what is the status of the work that we're doing? What is the work that we recently completed? And what is upcoming features that we want to ship? And so by having a Confluence page set up in this way, you're able to see this information real time. It's constantly being updated based on how the development team is focusing. And by having the comments set up, you're able to then have running meeting notes. So then this Confluence page then acts as a very easy way for your external stakeholders to be able to get context of how a specific meeting or a specific conversation is going over time. Lastly, what I want to share is how JIRA software can help with visibility. So what I have here is using driving visibility with the backlog. And so when you look at the backlog, as a product manager, I've been in these meetings where you have where you're like, oh my God, it's almost the end of the quarter, so we need to determine what that next quarter roadmap looks like. So let's get all the smartest people in the same room and quickly, hey, what features do you want in the roadmap? What features do you want in the roadmap? And it becomes this really intense and chaotic meeting where at the very end, it just doesn't need to be that way. And so what you can do is you can manage a backlog throughout a quarter by adding specific epics onto this backlog. And so what you can do from there is then answer specific questions such as, what features didn't we actually finish in this quarter? And how does that prioritization look in the next quarter as well? And that's super nice because rather than managing a backlog on an instant basis, what you can do is you can nurture and manage that backlog throughout a quarter. The other nice thing here is you can start to organize your work into releases. And when you organize your work into releases, then all of a sudden now you can answer the questions related to what was the impact of the work that you had done. So I just want to quickly talk about some quick pros and cons of this approach. So some of the pros is we're able to now focus on blockers. And I think the reason why the chaotic environment exists is because it's really difficult to understand what the status of the features are at any given time. So by shifting over the responsibility of figuring out status to the Atlassian tools, we're now able to have concrete decisions and figure out what the blockers are. Furthermore, by having all this information in our epics, we're able to create Confluence pages to continuously improve to have continuous improvement along the way. As I showed from our workflow, we're able to represent the product development steps from start to finish across many different workflows, and we're also able to answer a lot of the common questions that our stakeholders have. Now, there's some cons, of course, and those cons are common with any sort of tool, which is there's going to be learning curve and setup time and configuration is required. Now, with any sort of workflow, it's important to note that communication is not replaced by any workflow, so communication is still very vital along the way. So I just want to quickly show some quotes that the team has in terms of when we shifted over to this new explicit-based workflow. And TLDR is that the team actually found it incredibly helpful, and it's something that they found to be something that just saved them a lot of effort and provided them a lot of efficiency along the way. And so I think the major thing here is a lot of implicit responsibilities for a product team, and being able to put those responsibilities in explicit workflows is something that is incredibly helpful. So just to kind of describe what it was like before and afterwards. So before, super chaotic. As a product manager, I'm putting a lot of effort into figuring out what the status is at any given time of multiple features. That requires pinging people to understand what is the status at any given time. When it comes to figuring out the roadmap for the next quarter, we're getting into sudden meetings where we're trying to figure out what that next roadmap looks like. And at the end of the day, all of this is occurring because we're not clear about what the status of our projects are. Now, shifting over to a new place where now we're able to leverage the Atlassian tools. We have our backlog, we have Kanban boards, we can use the epics. A lot of this solves the most basic questions and allows us to start to focus on what actually matters, which is resolving the blockers. And so I just wanted to just say thank you, everybody, for allowing me to share my experiences. And I guess if there's any questions as well.
Yeah, thank you, Ron. Questions?